The South Carolina LSU basketball game is why I'm so necessary. Everybody's going to lie to you about what happened between Dawn Staley's South Carolina Gamecocks and Kim Mulkey's LSU Tigers. I'm not going to lie. I'm going to break down the whole truth. You don't want to miss this. Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I'm Jason Whitlock, your host. Happy Monday. Thank you for joining me. Start pounding that like button, start hitting subscribe, and get your notifications. If you're listening over Apple or wherever you're listening, make sure you hit that 5-star rating and help us fight the algorithms that are against us. Man, I'm excited about today's show. I hope you are too. It will be the most unique take, the most honest take, the most accurate take on this entire overblown LSU versus South Carolina brawl or fight or melee that you will hear. Buckle up. This is going to be good. This episode is brought to you by our good friends at Good Ranchers. Fall in love with beef, chicken, and seafood all over again by subscribing to goodranchers.com. Use my promo code FEARLESS to get a free $119 Heritage ham plus $25 off any box with your subscription. Here's the other most important thing you can do. You should go to blazetv.com/fearless, use my promo code FEARLESS, and you can save $20 on your yearly subscription. If you're a supporter of this show, that's the most important thing you can do. Subscribe to Blaze TV, because the Blaze TV is the reason why I get to cook up these fire starters, and I'm very excited about today's. I hope that I have some discipline here, and I'm somewhat concise, but man, I got a lot to say about this entire fiasco. Kim Mulkey and Dawn Staley, they hate each other. They're combatants in the most compelling and heated feud, perhaps, and I'm not exaggerating here, perhaps in the history of sports. There's nothing like this feud between Staley and Mulkey. Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, nah, that was all one-sided. Joe Frazier hated Muhammad Ali, and justifiably so, but Muhammad Ali didn't hate Joe Frazier. He just wanted to make money and hype it. There's nothing like this. The only thing that potentially, maybe the Pistons and the Bulls and Michael Jordan and Isaiah Thomas, but not really. I'm telling you, in the history of sports, what's going on between Dawn Staley and Kim Mulkey is the most compelling and heated feud since Cain and Abel, the Hatfields and the McCoys. So far, their mutual disdain remains concealed and or unacknowledged. They feign a shared admiration that the sports media sell to avoid the burden of addressing the complexities of a sour relationship analogous to the culture at large. Dawn Staley and Kim Mulkey are the Barack Obama and Donald Trump of women's college basketball. You can clearly see the fault lines whenever the schedule dictates that Staley's South Carolina Gamecocks face Mulkey's Louisiana State Tigers. The schedule cooperated on Sunday, pitting the Tigers and the Gamecocks in a clash for the SEC postseason title. As usual, an ugly war ensued. For the better part of 4 quarters, the teams exchanged elbows, shoves, taunts, and trash talk. At one point, LSU star Angel Reese pulled the hair of South Carolina center Kamilla Cardoso, a 6'7" import from Brazil. Finally, with 2 minutes to play, emotions exploded. Cardoso shoved 5'10" Flau'Jae Johnson to the ground. Both benches cleared. No punches were thrown. Nothing really happened. It wasn't a brawl. It was a scrum. The game stopped for 20 minutes as referees sorted through footage and tossed players from both teams from the game. Let's take a look for yourself here at what happened.
Gamecocks.
There's no punches thrown.
Wiley, and that that could be an intentional foul.
Oh, we don't want this. Again.
So you had a bump, an LSU player bumped a South Carolina player. The South Carolina player blew it off. Cardoso came over and shoved Flau'Jae Johnson to the ground. After that, other than, the brother jumping in over the scores, nothing happened. This was not the malice in the palace. This wasn't some unruly brawl. This was a shove from Cardoso, and that's really about it. Top-ranked and undefeated South Carolina went on to win the game 79-72. After the game, and everybody's making a big deal, Dawn Staley, she was so classy. Oh, God, she apologized for the incident. Take a listen.
I just want to apologize to the basketball community. When you're playing in championship games like this, in our league, things get heated. No bad intentions. They just tried, their emotions got so far ahead of them that sometimes these things happen. So I want to apologize for us playing a part in that, because that's not who we are and that's not what we're about. But I'm happy for the players that were able to finish the game and get us another championship.
All right, so there's Dawn saying, that's not who we are. That's not the way we play. I want to apologize. That's an ugly part of the game. We are our part in it. I get, and everybody loves it. Oh, Dawn, she's so classy. She apologized. She apologized because Cardoso, her 6'7", 250-pound post player, shoved a little girl to the ground. And when I say little, the little girl's 5'10", but compared to Cardoso, she's little. And so Dawn Staley apologized for that, but she mostly defended it and said, hey, look, this is a championship game, things get heated. This is what's gonna happen. And to some degree, she's right, particularly when these two teams meet. But Kim Mulkey, she's a bit more transparent than Dawn Staley. Mulkey offered no apology. She knows exactly what and who LSU and South Carolina are. They're brawlers. The players are proxy for a war between their feisty, undersized coaches. They play a physical brand of basketball that the SEC allows. Listen to Kim Mulkey.
Well, let me say this. Do you realize there was only one foul called on each team with 2 minutes to play in the fourth quarter? Are you kidding me? That might have created some of that. Not the way we play. We're going to foul your ass. Not the way they play. They're going to foul your ass. But you only blew that whistle one time? Think about that now.
All right, so that's Kim Mulkey being completely transparent about what goes on in South Carolina basketball and LSU basketball. At halftime, and I didn't ask the guys to pull this clip, but at halftime or between quarters, she got interviewed. I think it was right at halftime. She got interviewed by the ESPN host, and they asked her about how physical the first half was. And Kim Mulkey looked at her like, are you kidding me? You know what kind of basketball we play? Basically, she looked at like, how dare you ask me about how physical this game is? Have you watched any of the tapes? Do you know who we are and who they are? Basically was her response. She said this at halftime. Everybody knows what South Carolina and LSU are. This is a feud. This is a catfight that goes on every time these two teams play. They try to kill each other. Everybody knows it. A year ago, Iowa coach Lisa Bluter respectfully described rebounding against Staley's Gamecocks as like going to a bar fight. Dawn Staley, never reluctant to play the race card, complained long and loudly that Bluter's description was racially motivated. Dawn Staley fancies herself coaching a beautiful style of play. She thinks she's Muhammad Ali and that the Gamecocks float like butterflies and sting like bees. They don't. They're Big George Foreman. They win with brute force and intimidation, and everybody that follows women's college basketball knows this. There's no denial about it. Listen to Angel Reese after the game talk about her mindset, and it's so crystal clear that everybody's in on this. When we fight, it's a fight. When we play against each other, it's an ugly catfight brawl. Listen to Angel Reese.
We're not scared of South Carolina, and I'm gonna repeat that. We're not scared of South Carolina. And a lot of people are scared of them, and we came in and battled and battled and battled and battled and battled to the end. And of course, we came up short, but we'll see them again.
It is what it is. It is what it is. And you'll be listening to people talk about this who have no idea what's at the root of all of this. Because they've either only seen clips, they haven't followed women's college basketball for any length of time, and they're just paying attention now because of Caitlin Clark and because of their love affair with Dawn Staley or whatever, or their hatred of Kim Mulkey. They're just figuring out, just learning what's going on. And so the people that know nothing are sitting there, oh God, Dawn is so classy and Kim is so classless. No. These two are in a blood feud. These two, what's at the root of this is so obvious. Envy, jealousy, entitlement, legacy, and power. Women's college basketball is America's hottest sport. Stick with me. I'm going to repeat that. I just want you all to understand what we're seeing. We're seeing a fight for power. Again, this is why I analogize it to like Obama and Trump. This is Game of Thrones going on in women's college basketball. It's the women's college basketball. Remember those WNBA commercials, We Got Next? The WNBA does not have next. Women's college basketball does. Its growth and traction extends beyond the Caitlin Clark phenomenon. The NBA's pursuit of international relevance and the one and done rule destroyed American men's basketball. Men's college basketball has never been more irrelevant than right now. Just think this through. Honestly, look, man, you guys watch this show. You watch all the people that say, oh, Whitlock's a sexist pig. Whitlock can't stand women. He don't want them to vote. Whitlock is telling you in real time, they've made me a women's college basketball fan. I've watched more women's college basketball this season than men's college basketball and the NBA combined. Now, just let me, in the interest of fairness, let me be completely transparent before I go further. I've been a fan of women's college basketball, a soft fan of women's college basketball for 25, 30 years. We had a player in high school named Linda Godby. She was 6'6". She could hit these turnaround jumpers, and she went to go on and play at Auburn. But my high school basketball team when I was in high school was great. And so that was my first venture into like, hey, women's basketball is kind of interesting. Linda Godby, we had a girl named Melissa South who was good. But anyway, I've always been interested in women's basketball. And then when I worked in Kansas City, the Big 8, Big 12 tournament used to be played in Kansas City, and the women would come to town. And this is just in the interest of fairness, I got to know Kim Mulkey a little bit. And then when Kim Mulkey had Brittney Griner, I went to some practices, met Brittney and Kim and the whole team. And so you can go back to that time. I've been following women's basketball softly. Not with a great deal of passion, but I've been following and keeping up with it. And now this Caitlin Clark phenomenon has turned me into a hardcore fan. And this feud between Dawn Staley and Kim Mulkey has deep, deep roots. Because the men's game is off the radar. I'm going to fill out a women's college basketball bracket with some knowledge of what's going on. If I fill out a men's college basketball bracket, which I probably won't, I won't know. I don't know. Houston's ranked number one. I'm friends with Kelvin Sampson. I know that. I don't know anybody on Kelvin Sampson's team at Houston. I like Bill Self. We were friends, and I covered him for a long time. I don't know anybody on his roster. I think they're having a bad season. I haven't watched. I don't care. All of my passion is directed at this women's game. The women's players, they stay for 4 or 5 years, they build large brands and create compelling narratives. Women's college basketball is a really big deal. Dawn Staley and Kim Mulkey are brawling over who will reign as queen of the game. Sports media has anointed Dawn Staley as queen. She's in national TV commercials opposite former Duke men's coach Mike Krzyzewski. Each offseason, Dawn Staley's rumored as a potential head coach in the NBA. Corporate media fawns over Dawn Staley. I wonder why. Could it be that she's black? Could it be she's been romantically linked to a former player, Kayla Davis, and her longtime assistant coach, Lisa Boyer? This ain't me. Go to the internet. You can go do the homework yourself. At one point, Dawn Staley wrote, her longtime associate head coach, this Lisa Boyer, Dawn Staley tweeted out, we're like a married couple and blah, blah, blah. And then there were, in 2017, 18, 19, somewhere around there, after this Kayla Davis wrapped up her career, there were rumors and stories about Dawn Staley and her former player. Don't blame me for this stuff. And all the Johnny-come-latelys that are talking about what's going on in women's college basketball, they know none of this. They're oblivious. They're just doing clickbait, and they're not going to have a real discussion with you about what's really going on in women's college basketball. There are millions of dollars on the line, and these women are fighting over the fame, glory, and money that comes along with being the queen of women's college basketball. And just for a bit more contrast, Dawn Staley patrols the sidelines in androgynous hoodies, sweatsuits, and jackets intended to catch the eye of her allies. Staley checks all the right boxes. But here's the troubling reality for the mainstream media. Her resume, her coaching resume, does not match Kim Mulkey's. Kim Mulkey has won 4 national titles. Staley has won 2. Mulkey is the only person to win a national title as a player, an assistant coach, and a head coach. If someone is going to be the face of women's college basketball from the sidelines, and it's not going to be Gino Auriemma because his time at UConn has seemed to pass, it should be Kim Mulkey. Twice won the women's national championship as a player, 4 times as a coach, head coach has won the national title, as an assistant coach, won the national title. But there's a problem. I wonder what it is. Kim Mulkey's white. Kim Mulkey was married for 20 years and has 2 kids. She patrols the sidelines in what could best be described as cougar gear. Flamboyant outfits intended to make women jealous and men intrigued. Kim Mulkey does not check all the boxes. She often says things that infuriate the mainstream media. How about this for an example? Mulkey did not rally around Brittney Griner when the WNBA player was incarcerated in Russia. Mulkey coached Griner at Baylor. Staley, of course, spoke out in support of the LGBTQIA plus icon. 2 years ago, Dawn Staley complained that Louisiana State University did not provide Nikki Fargas, a black coach, the same level of support as Kim Mulkey. Kim Mulkey did not take the bait. She expressed admiration for Staley. But trust me, LSU lured Mulkey away from Baylor and quickly made her the highest paid coach in all of women's basketball for the express purpose of destroying Dawn Staley. It is a labor of love. The feud between Mulkey and Staley will fuel women's college basketball after Caitlin Clark enters WNBA irrelevance. That last part, that's my fire starter. That last part is not a shot at Caitlin Clark. It's the truth. In my view, Caitlin Clark is making a huge mistake leaving the women's college basketball platform. I get it. The WNBA, I'm sure, has offered her a queen or a king's ransom, and they're going to try to build the whole thing around Caitlin Clark. It's not going to work. In my view, it's not going to work. The passion that's generated in college sports will not be duplicated in the WNBA. It can't be. People love Iowa. People love LSU. People love South Carolina. People love those universities. They have all this emotional attachments to them. No one loves the Las Vegas Aces. It's not the game is not wholesome enough in the WNBA. You got a bunch of mad, angry Alphabet Mafia people tatted up, complaining that they're not making as much money as the men. It's not a lovable event. I wish that Caitlin Clark would return for a fifth year, but she's already made a decision. Good luck to her. I think she'll fall into the WNBA abyss. That platform will not sustain her stardom. That's why, despite all the rumors, because trust me, if Dawn Staley wanted to coach in the NBA, she'd be a head coach right now. But she's smart enough to realize the action, the hype, the money, the relevance, the traction. Better to be the queen of women's college basketball than coaching in the NBA, where she will get exposed in the NBA. She would get exposed in the NBA. She gets more talent at South Carolina in terms of the disparity between her and her competition. She would not get that in the WNBA. And the passion, the fan base, it's just not there. She is fighting a race with Kim Mulkey because, again, Gino Auriemma's time seems to have passed at UConn. She's fighting for Queen of the Jungle in women's college basketball with Kim Mulkey. And many people are mostly choosing sides. Many people. That may be inaccurate. A lot of people, some people, are choosing sides based on race. Based on, well, I want to be an ally to the LGBTQ. I want to be an ally to the Black Lives Matter crowd. I want to pretend that Dawn Staley and Kim Mulkey, they're not equals here. Dawn has so much more class, and she means so much more for women's basketball than Kim Mulkey. It's not true. In many ways, in some ways, they're the exact same. They were both. Kim Mulkey, I believe, is 5'4". Dawn Staley's 5'6". And they were both dominant. They're 10 years in age separation. Both dominant in women's college basketball as little undersized players. Dawn Staley played at Virginia. Kim Mulkey played at Louisiana Tech. Kim Mulkey led her team to 2 national championships. Dawn Staley led her teams to 3 Final Fours and 1 runner-up finish in the national championship. And then they both matriculated into coaching, and somehow, really just after winning 1 national championship, Dawn Staley was anointed as the next big deal in women's college basketball, the heir to Gino Auriemma's throne, and given that place and positioned in commercials opposite Coach K after winning a single national championship. And Kim Mulkey is mostly vilified by the press. And I'm going to show you the example of her vilification by the press. It's happening today. It started happening yesterday. People can't stand Kim Mulkey because she's not passionate enough about being on Team Alphabet Mafia, because this is a heterosexual mother of 2 divorcee who, based on the way she dresses, still wants the attention of men. Dawn Staley checks all the boxes. She's everything that corporate media and globalists and the whole elitist movement, she's everything they want women to be. Black, perhaps, although she's not on the record, but all the rumors say gay, and perhaps, she loves to play the black card, but also perhaps I can't go too far, but it's been written, it's been talked about, it's been discussed that her and this former player, the player she coached, rumors about them, fits the profile. I want to take a second here. I want to play you a Shannon Sharpe clip talking about this on Nightcap. But before I do that, I just want to take 1 second here and talk to you about our great friends at Preborn. As we sit here today, the lives of babies still in the womb hang in the balance. I want to talk to you for a minute about the most important and pressing issue of our day, the lives of the unborn. They need our help. The Ministry of Preborn empowers young expectant mothers in the crisis to choose life. Preborn has rescued hundreds of thousands of babies' lives through ultrasound. When a woman considering abortion visits a preborn center, she gets to hear her baby's heartbeat and meet that precious child on ultrasound. And it's a divine encounter. The majority of the time, she will choose life for her baby. I'm proud to be affiliated with an organization that's not only working to save lives, but is succeeding. Preborn has a passion to save unborn babies from abortion and see women come to Christ. Over the past 15 years, preborn centers have counseled over 450,000 women considering abortion, and over 200,000 babies have been saved. Those are amazing numbers, but we can do better. Will you help rescue babies' lives? To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby. That's pound 250, the keyword baby. Or give the way that I prefer to give. Preborn.com/fearless. That's preborn.com/fearless. I want to play you this clip of that again, I think speaks to how Kim Mulkey is not liked by the pre-approved corporate Hollywood stamped elite group. Here's Shannon Sharpe on Nightcap talking about on First Take, talking about LSU and South Carolina and Kim Mulkey and Dawn Staley.
Did you see the 2 differences in the stories and the coaches? You see what Dawn Staley said and how she tried to downplay it, and you see Kim Mulkey, how she tried to upplay it. I understand this is an SEC championship game. There's a lot riding on it. LSU, if I'm not mistaken, hadn't beaten South Carolina in a very, very long time. And now we're in the SEC championship. And when you take things, you mean it figuratively, not literally. Oh, we're going to fight. We're going to fight them tooth and nail. We're going to scratch and claw. We're going to do everything we can. You give nothing, you allow them to take nothing. But Kim Mulkey, instead of saying, you know what, sometimes when emotion is high, logic is low. And that was not what women's college basketball is about, especially with the love and support that the women's game has received this year. Thanks to Caitlin Clark, thanks to USC, Juju Watkins, and some of the others. But for you to take that stand, I wish Cardoso would have pushed Angel Reese. Really? Is that what you want? You want to see a fight? You want the women's game to be marred by a fight? Really? Come on, Kim Mulkey. You've got to be better. And we've got to start doing a better job of holding Kim Mulkey accountable and responsible for some of her comments. We let that stuff slide because she's a national champion. I refuse to do that. I believe she was wrong in this instance. And Dawn Staley showed the utmost class and respect, not only for the game itself, but for her team and for the opposing team. I wish Kim Mulkey had showed that level of respect.
This is comical, and it's uninformed, and it's not a sophisticated view of what just happened. One coach just lost, the other coach just won. You catch one coach on the court right after winning. What do you think that coach is going to say? Of course they're going to take the high road. They won. But if you really analyze what Dawn Staley said is, let me translate. If she had been completely honest. Yeah, I wish Cardoso hadn't pushed that little girl to the ground. But you know what? In this game, it's going to be heated. It's going to be physical. Tempers are going to flare. And I'm just glad that, we won and no one got hurt. That's what Dawn Staley really said. Kim Mulkey said what is actually, not that what Dawn Staley said isn't true, but what is more true is, hey, anytime we play, it's going to be an ugly catfight, dogfight. The referees did nothing. They allowed this fight to go on the entire game. And both Don and I have agreed this is the way things are going to play out. The SEC officiates the SEC and our games in a way that allow us to have this type of fight. Go back and look at any of our games. This is what it is. Go back and look at the way South Carolina plays. And they drag you into, as Lisa Bluter said, a bar fight. And as Angel Reese said, they try to get you to be afraid of them. We're not afraid of them. We're going to match them shove for shove, elbow for elbow. Anybody that actually watched the game, I did think if things were a bit one-sided with the cheap shots, LSU took more cheap shots than South Carolina. No question about it. They caught Angel Reese on tape pulling the hair of Cardoso. Angel Reese got a foul for throwing her elbow wildly in Cardoso's face earlier in the game. But there was so much pushing and shoving, so many fouls uncalled in that game. Because that's what LSU versus South Carolina is. That's what the SEC. Anytime you have a coach that's as dominant as Dawn Staley, and she's been at South Carolina now for maybe 15, 16 years, I can't remember. But she's the dominant coach in that conference. And the conference caters to her style of play. It's very physical. It's very rough. Everybody in women's college basketball knows it. LSU goes out and hires Kim Mulkey, who is originally from Louisiana. Again, she played at Louisiana Tech. They lure her away from Baylor to say, you know what, we need someone who's willing to fight tooth and nail with Dawn Staley and is willing to inspire her team to not be afraid of Dawn Staley and her team. That's Kim Mulkey's job. That's what they're paying her all the money for. That's what the SEC and everybody has agreed to. And so for people to sit around and, oh, God, you see how classy Dawn was? No. Dawn had to apologize because Cardoso did the most egregious thing. If you actually go watch the tape of the so-called melee fight, whatever, it was just a scrum. None of these women threw a punch. The players that came off the bench, They weren't wild and out of control. This is one of the most overblown things I've ever seen. The really interesting things that happened were the brother coming out of the stands and hopping over the scores table. And eventually I'll talk with Steve Kim about the referee, the female ref who ran away from the fracas. You can see two other refs trying to break it up, and then you see some Barbie doll ref run away and go to midcourt and stand back and look at it all. The one ref needs to go to Uvalde and sign up for their police force. But that's all that happened. No one threw a punch. And so Dawn Staley, winning, take the high road. We won. Yeah, Cardoso did the shove. That's a bad look. Let me apologize. In Kim Mulkey's mind, she's like, man, I don't know any of our players really did anything wrong. The one girl bumped into a South Carolina player. The South Carolina player ignored it and kept going to the bench. And then none of LSU's players threw a punch, escalated the event, nothing. What's she supposed to apologize for? That she's going to apologize because the refs let it get out of hand? And now she could be talking out of both sides of her mouth in terms of like, the refs let it get out of hand because that seems to be what you and Dawn Staley want to happen. You want a big cat fight brawl during the game. What did she say? They foul our ass, we foul their ass, or whatever. That is how both teams play because these two are in a blood feud. They're at war over supremacy of women's college basketball. This is women fighting over money, fighting over fame, fighting over attention. How do you choose sides in a feud like this? For me, and I've told you my biases, that I know Kim Mulkey. If you listen to this show, if one woman dresses in a way to get the attention of men, and one woman dresses in a way to get the attention of, I don't know, her allies, Alphabet people, or whatever, for me, and this isn't some hatred or anything, but it's like, I'm going to prefer the woman who wants the attention of men. Now, that's just me. I'm going to root for the woman who, again, anybody that's watched this show, I'm not a Brittney Griner supporter or fan. I think Brittney Griner is one of the most entitled, most ungrateful, irresponsible, and I know, look, if I was a woman and was 6'8", I'd have some issues too. But I understand where Kim Mulkey is coming from as it relates to Brittney Griner. You deal with an entitled athlete for years and years and years, and then you try to warn them and say, hey, look, you gonna go to a foreign country and try to smuggle any amount of drugs across into their country? Your stupidity puts you in that Russian jail, and we're supposed to send the merchant of death. We're gonna trade you for the merchant of death? I'm just telling you, I lean into my values as it relates to who am I going to root for. Do I think either one of these women are perfect? Heck no. This is two women fighting for attention and money. There's no good guy or bad guy. But I'm probably going to side with Kim Mulkey here. I have sided with Kim Mulkey here. Dawn Staley plays the race card. Dawn Staley went after BYU students over something that had nothing to do with her. Nothing to do with her basketball team. She wasn't there. She doesn't know anything about it. And she smeared BYU students as racist and refused to play a game there. And everybody wants to talk about how classy Dawn Staley is. because she apologized for her player shoving someone to the ground? Miss me with all of that. We're going to bring in Steve Kim to further this conversation and talk about a few other things in the sports world. Before I go to Steve Kim, I want to invite you guys to Roll Call. Roll Call 2.0 right here in Nashville, Tennessee on Saturday, June 1st. Please visit fearlessarmyrollcall.com right now, fearlessarmyrollcall.com to reserve your spot. Steve Kim, next. Hello, Fearless Army. I'm Jason Whitlock, your leader. I'm going to spend 2024 discussing growth and sacrifice. Hard times are here. Harder times are coming. What has stopped American growth and caused a regression in fundamental freedoms and values? A lack of sacrifice. Our ancestors sacrificed for our benefit. We have not sacrificed to protect the progress they died for. No sacrifice, no freedom. What impedes man's willingness to sacrifice? His ignorance, his perversion, his pride, his ingratitude, and his cowardice, his rejection of God. The Bible is a story about the power and the necessity of sacrifice. Sacrifice is the sun, rain, and fertilizer of growth. Growth is our life purpose. Grow in the knowledge, wisdom, fear, obedience, and reverence to the Most High. Growth requires sacrifice will be our theme for Roll Call 2.0 this summer, June 1, right back here in Nashville. We're excited to welcome you. Let me spend a minute explaining what GROWTH actually stands for us in the Fearless Army. The G is for game plan. In order to properly grow, it's essential we work from the strategic game plan spelled out in the Bible. The R, responsibility. As we grow as men, we understand and accept our responsibilities to God, family, and teammates. The O, ownership. We embrace ownership of our destiny. Outsiders do not determine our fate. The W, wisdom. We honor, value, and share the wisdom imparted to us by elders, coaches, and leaders. The T, trust. We must be worthy of trust. The reliability of a man's word defines him far more than popularity and material possessions. The H, humility. The reward for humility and fear of the Lord is riches and honor and life. That's straight from Proverbs 22:4. Come join us in Nashville as we talk about growth and sacrifice and how without sacrifice there will be no growth. Roll Call 2.0 right here in Nashville, Saturday, June 1st.
모두 다 빨리 박수 쳐 기다리지 말고 서둘러 Reason that I'm back is to feed you raps I see that you are 배불러 So fly
All right, welcome back. Time for some Steve Kim, the Korean Cosell. Cosell, welcome back to the program. Dawn Staley versus Kim Mulkey, the greatest, ugliest feud perhaps in the history of sports, and no one's talking about it. Am I exaggerating?
Of course you are. This is what you do. I mean, we literally had it's one of the great moments in college basketball ever. I'll never forget it. This is when I still followed the sport. Coach Cal, old John Calipari, I think it was still at UMass, was giving, it's a good game too. All of a sudden, Chaney walks in. Don Chaney, the guy that literally looked like an owl.
John.
Well, Don Chaney was coaching the Temple Owls.
John.
And they started going back and forth.
John,
Don, whatever. Yeah, Don's the running back from Miami. Anyway, John Chaney goes, "What? I'll kill you, man!" And you know what? He meant it. And they had to separate him. And Calipari was like, "Oh boy, I'm still a white guy." So I mean, come on. That it is not to that level. It is not to that level. Let's be honest. When you give an actual death threat and you rush at a guy and they have to like hold you back. Come on. Cheney Calipari. Come on.
No, I'm going to tell you what. They didn't matter. I mean, they weren't at the top of college basketball at that time. Temple wasn't winning anything at that time. And was Calipari, yeah, he was UMass's coach at that time. These are nice little, somewhat mid-major college basketball programs.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. UMass went to the Final Four one year, or they came close with Marcus Camby. They were pretty good. And Temple, no respect for Eddie Jones, Aaron McKee, and Mark Shaken Bacon Macon. That was a real program, my friend. They produced NBA talent. Come on.
No, look, no question about it. But these are two. One coach has 4 national titles. The other one has 2. Both coaches were tremendous college basketball players themselves. They're at the top of their game, and to see them at odds with each other and then to watch their 2 teams go play each other with this much animus and this type of war, I'm telling you, I'm not, because it's just like people think like Ali and Frazier had some feud. That was a one-sided feud. Ali was just promoting fights. Joe Frazier hated Muhammad Ali. I don't think it was a two-way street here. And so, Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, they never hated each other. They just competed against each other. Gene Katie and Bobby Knight just competed against each other. I don't even know. I can't and I tried yesterday to come up with a feud like this in sports, and I don't think there's anything that compares.
First of all, Bobby Knight and Gene Katie were like friends. Bobby Knight respected Katie because, in the immortal words of Bobby Knight, they didn't cheat. He was not Lou Do Henson, okay? Couple things. I will not let you besmirch the Ali-Frazier rivalry, the greatest rivalry in boxing, the Thriller in Manila, the fight of the century, March 8th, 1971, okay? By the way, Joe Frazier had the greatest line ever when, I think it was after the Ali lighted the Olympic torch in Atlanta. They said, well, Joe, who do you think won that rivalry? And Joe Frazier goes, I don't know. You look at him and you look at me. You tell me who's doing better. Oh, God, low blow smoking Joe. Now, you talk about rivalries. I'll tell you one that's close to my heart, and they made an iconic T-shirt. Catholics versus convicts in the late 80s. If you were a fan of either the University of Miami or those dastardly domers at Notre Dame, hate them to this day. From 1987 to about 1990, that was about as heated a rivalry where the coaches did not like each other. I mean, every time Jimmy Johnson went back as a Dallas head coach to scout at Notre Dame, I mean, it was the funniest reaction, and the Notre Dame fans used to call Jimmy Johnson pork-faced Satan. But they grew to love him, I think. And we hated Lou Holtz. And in fact, the 1989 game, I'll never forget. It was a Thanksgiving Friday. It was, to me, one of the greatest wins in Miami history. But if you talk to people that were there on both sides, it was so, I don't want to say violent, but dangerous that the Notre Dame administration said, okay, we're going to pull back on this rivalry. Like, no more. We can't do it. They played one more game in 1990, and they didn't play for years. Now, Jason, I read your live tweets of the game yesterday on a great Sunday afternoon. I'm not going to lie. I almost had to not unfollow you. I wouldn't do that. I almost had to mute you. I said, I'm going to put this on mute till Monday. I can't take this. So I'm reading reports of this fight, this little skirmish that broke out between those fine young ladies at those 2 fine academic institutions. So I said, okay, let's see what this was about. Now I'm expecting the malice in the palace with females. Jason, can I tell you something? I saw better fights on Miami Beach for spring break than what broke out there. Give me a break. That's nothing what happened. That's nothing. Big nothing burger.
That is very accurate, and I've acknowledged that nothing happened here other than Cardoso shoving the woman to the ground. The rest of the women were, in my well behaved as it relates to that melee. During the game, they were trying to kill each other, and the refs allowed it. I just Steve, I want to ask you, and again, I know that as it relates to women's basketball, just the whole deal, but women's basketball is the hottest sport in America. It's growing in relevance and traction faster than every other sport in America, in my view. And the only thing coming close probably is UFC.
Jason, I will say this. When you're at the lowest ebb, any type of gains is significant, but I will admit it is more relevant than men's college basketball. My timeline yesterday on Twitter, even taking aside your live tweeting of that game, I saw a lot more about what was going on there. Referees running away, brothers jumping on the court. To this day, I still cannot name a Duke player after Zion Williamson. I know that one of their white guys tripped another player. White Duke players seem to be doing. That's a tradition that'll never end, right? So anyway, I don't even know a local. Well, I know Bronny James, but outside, I don't know a single UCLA player. Anyone at USC, I really don't know. I don't know another player in the Pac-12, to be honest with you. So yes, you are right. As of right now, does Caitlin Clark have a bigger profile than anyone in the men's game? I will admit it. Yes, she does.
Well, so does Angel Reese.
Okay.
And so does Juju Watkins. And there's some guard at Notre Dame, and I can't call her name off the top of my head, Hidalgo or something. Anyway, she's got a big profile. The women's game is ascending, and the men's game is declining. And I'm just telling you, I have far more. I can't believe how much women's college basketball I've watched. It triples what I've watched of the NBA and men's college basketball this season.
Well, that's because that's probably like less than zero, Jason. But Jason, be honest. Be honest. Are you going to fill out a women's tournament bracket, but not a men's?
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
I knew it.
I'm fast. Yes. Of course. Steve, let me say this. If USC, LSU, South Carolina, and Iowa make the Final Four, and again, that would be punching all four lottery tickets to get.
You're going.
Oh, of course I would go. Of course I would go. But more important than that, they will crush the ratings of the men's Final Four.
I don't disagree.
Kim Mulkey,
I don't disagree. Yeah.
You got Kim Mulkey, Dawn Staley, Juju Watkins, Caitlin Clark, and Angel Reese all in the same arena. They will crush. No, we can't. It's not even close. And so,
Jason, I think there's a commentary to be had here that the skill level is probably improving. I'll let you decide that. You're the one who watches it. But also,
no, it is. It's improving tremendously.
The one and done in men's basketball has ruined college basketball. It's amazing. Like, look, I swear to you right now, in this great audience, I did not Google this. I still remember most of the 1992 Duke team that went back-to-back. It was Grant Hill, Christian Laettner, Bobby Hurley, Grant Hill, Thomas Hill, Monty Clark, Cherokee Parks was a freshman. And I still remember a lot of those teams from that era. I mean, I still remember like really good Syracuse teams that never went to the Final Four that had guys like Billy Owens, Sherman Douglas, Ronnie Cycli, Derek Coleman, although they made it his freshman year. Right. And I remember, like, you talk about UCLA. Jason, I was just thinking about this a couple years ago, or a couple days ago, actually. The early 90s UCLA squads actually had a lot of NBA talent recruited by Jim Herrick, led by Don McClain, Tracy Murray, Mitchell Butler, Derek Martin. And then later on, they won the national title with Ed O'Bannon, Charles O'Bannon, Tyus Edney, J.R. Henderson, Toby Bailey. And so you say, okay, Steve, name a player on UCLA's team this year. I'd probably go with Lonzo Ball. I mean, so it is like, look, I will acquiesce. You have made a point. The women's college basketball game gets that Pac-Man thing over men's college basketball game. I will cede that. Yes, I will cede that.
Let me ask you, of the melee, and I'm not of the scrum or whatever, what was more interesting? The ref running away from the fight or the brother running onto the court? Who do you have more respect for? Who do you want to criticize?
Both. Because a man did what a man had to do. He's playing peacemaker. And the woman just said, like that tweet, that's between y'all, my name is Bennett and I ain't in it. And she looked like a very feminine young lady. And she's like, oh my God, get me away from these people. I don't blame her. I don't. She's there to call traveling 3 seconds. She's not there to play Mills Lane. Come on, Jay. I like the fact that that young lady knew her role. She knew her limits. I appreciate that.
She reverted to her factory settings. And to me, it speaks to, again, she just like, oh, I know I'm running around trying to be a man here, but let me be who I really am. I ain't about this life, and I'm going to run away from this. And she did. I think it's embarrassing. I think it's, Tom Penders tweeted at me. Remember Tom Penders, the old Texas coach?
Yeah, coach of Texas.
He tweeted at me, that the officiating in women's basketball has not caught up to the play. The play and the coaching have all escalated, but the officiating is way, way behind. And I think that's very accurate, and it's because they're not focused on merit. They're focused on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so the best people aren't getting the jobs. And they're hunting down and telling every woman, hey, put a whistle in your mouth and we'll make you a big-time official as soon as possible. And she's
Jason,
not built for it. She's not, yeah.
I get it. Okay, so she's not female Dick Bavetta. Okay, I get it. All right. I have a question, though. And you talk about the skill level of the women's game evolving. I'm not going to argue that, okay? But do games like this, and it seemed like it was like the 90s version of the Miami Heat, New York Knicks. Remember those game awards that they used to have? And I'll be honest, Jason, I hated that era of basketball. I actually believe that game got too physical and some of the artistry and skill was taken away. And in my view, once that era came about, the game of force, as Pat Riley called it, I saw way too many 84-78 games, and it was not entertaining. Do you think games of that nature are good for women's college basketball specifically?
No, and no, they're not. But the reason why it's compelling is because of the two women on the sidelines. The players and the style of play are just proxy for a war that's going on between Mulkey and Dawn Staley, and they're having a fight, and they're sending their players out there to go fight each other. And so I watched, just keeping it real, I watched Iowa and Nebraska, that game, before South Carolina and LSU. They're up there in the Big Ten playing a beautiful style of basketball. There's all this motion and passing and backdoor cuts and sharing of the basketball. It's almost like you're watching two different sports when you went from Iowa and Nebraska to this street fight going on in the SEC, and it's being allowed by the referees. And so, no, it's not a beautiful style of play, but it is compelling because you're really, I'm sitting there watching like, look at Kim Mulkey and Dawn Staley go toe-to-toe. One of them's dressed like a cougar out chasing guys, and one of them's dressed like Snoop from The Wire out chasing women. And, and it's just like, holy cow, what's going on here? It's fascinating, compelling. The one person I will defend in all of this, and I mean this sincerely, the brother who jumped onto the court, I wouldn't have done it, but I have no problem with it. If my sister, that dude reverted to his factory settings. His sister just got shoved to the ground by a 6'7", 240-pound person. His sister's 5'10", maybe 140, 150, I don't know. She just got shoved to the ground by someone who's twice her size, 70, 80 pounds heavier. And this dude reverted to his factory settings and jumped onto the court not to fight any other women, but to protect his sister. I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, but I get it. He reverted to his factory settings, and the female ref reverted to hers.
Oh, I have a question. So let's say that skirmish grows, it burgeons, it gets more violent. Was he going to sock a female if he had to in defense of his sister?
No. I think he was going to grab his sister and get her out of there, or try to grab those women. I just, in his mind, when you see a 6'7", 240, 50-pound person, in his mind, and I'm not saying he's right, but in his mind, he's like, well, Kim Mulkey and Dawn Staley can't shut this down. And he's thinking the other women coaches can't shut this down. And he's not thinking about, police or anything like that. And so I'm not saying he's right, but I'm just, in a moment, in an instance, my sister is shoved to the ground by anyone 6'7", 240, 250, your instincts are going to say, let me go get involved. Let me put a stop to this.
Yeah. So with that said, do you blame that female ref for saying, oh, yeah, I know my limits? See, again, I
blame her for taking the job.
Well, I get it, but I just come on, let the men handle it. Again, let's be honest. If your house was burning on fire, would you rather have an all-female firefighting staff or all men? Let's be honest about it. Give me the men.
Oh,
give me the men.
But look, there was another female ref who did not evacuate. She stayed right in the scrum and started breaking it up.
She may have been about it. She was about it.
Hey, I want to stick with women's basketball for one more. This may take a minute because I got to get your thoughts on this. I'm sure you've seen this story. What did I do? I had it called up. The story about the USA Today writer that said that the face of women's basketball, women's college basketball, needs to be black. And let me call this up because I wanted to read you a couple of excerpts from the story. And of course, it's written by a white woman, Lindsay Schnell. I wonder if she's related to Dave Schnell, former Indiana University quarterback. But anyway, women's basketball needs faces of the future to be black. Enter Juju Watkins and Hannah Hidalgo. That's who the player at Notre Dame was. And so she goes through a little long description here of Juju Watkins shooting a shot and blah, blah, blah. Then she goes on, with Caitlin Clark headed to the 2024 WNBA draft, where she's projected number 1 overall. Watkins, the nation's leading scorer this season behind Clark, is positioned to become the face of women's basketball. She'll be joined by Notre Dame point guard Hannah Hidalgo, the other favorite. Not lost on any power brokers in the game, both of these players are black, and in a game built by black women, it matters that the faces of the future look like the faces of the past. Steve, and I know this is a white woman writing this, but this level of blatant racism and stupidity, how did America's newspaper, there's no editor, there's nobody at USA Today said, hey man, this is insane. What if someone argued, hey, given Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer and all the white men that built golf, it's important that Tiger Woods be replaced as the face of golf by a white person. They must look like the past. How is this being published? How is this woman welcome in the field of journalism? I just don't get it.
Well, I mean, look, she probably went to a leftist diploma mill, like most of them do. She obviously is now invited to the barbecue, probably a lifetime pass. But this is why, Jason, when I hear of the newspaper business struggling or an individual newspaper shuttering its operations and dying, I used to feel bad about it. Now my reaction is, good. I hope there's more. But again, this is white guilt. This is what they want. This is why nobody trusts the corporate media or legacy media conglomerates anymore. And it's pandering. That's what it is. It's not journalism. It is pandering. And I find it interesting. So in boxing, we've been looking for the great white hope, or there's a perpetual notion that we need one. In college basketball, because there's not enough of them, we need the great black hope. And let's be honest about it. One of the reasons why Caitlin Clark is so popular, it's not just her skill, that she is an outlier, but this whole notion that somehow there's a great replacement theory on the way and we have to keep this game more or less black. Someone needs to tell Ms. Schnell the game will always be black. I think basketball at its highest levels, men and women, will still be predominantly black. That's just the way it is. It's okay. We don't really care. I don't. But this is just pandering. And quite frankly, I don't expect anything less from the USA DK.
I love that. USA DK.
Thank you.
Wow,
Thank you.
That's good.
Thank you.
When we do a
Go
thumbnail,
ahead.
let's try to work
It's
USA
yours.
DK
That's
into
yours.
that. But Steve, I'm going to slightly disagree with you. I don't think these sports are going to remain as black as they have been in the past.
Okay.
I think that's, and I'm going to tell you why, though. I'm going to tell you why. As the destruction of the black family is going to impact, because there's this myth out here that, like in basketball, that it's a baby mama dominated league, and it's really not. That a lot of the top black players come from two-parent families because it takes two parents to shuttle kids to all these AAU tournaments and all the stuff they do during the summer. It's a group effort. It's a mom and dad effort. And so as the black family continues to destruct, you're going to see less and less of our kids reach the top of even these athletic professions that they used to. And so I find the entire discussion and the platforming of this level of stupidity, it's just troubling. And the decay of newspapers, I get what you're saying, like they're getting what they deserve, but I'm not so sure, because newspapers used to have standards, and you used to have to like legitimately earn the right to voice your opinion. Remember in the day, Steve, that there would be beat reporters and reporters, and they didn't offer opinions.
No,
now,
they didn't.
Everybody offers an opinion, whether they're qualified, whether they're smart enough to do it, whether, some people just don't have the capacity to say smart things on a consistent basis, smart and or provocative things on a consistent basis, and they end up tripping all over themselves and making fools of themselves in an attempt to be interesting.
Jason, I also believe that the presence and the magnitude of social media has a lot to do with it. And a lot of journalists, I see this in boxing with the media, they pander, or they don't want to say their true feelings, or they couch their feelings, or they soften their opinions to make sure that nobody attacks them online. And I'm at the point now that if I piss off a certain sect of people, I know I'm doing the right thing and I'm beginning to enjoy it. Same with you. Whatever you say, Jason, I get great joy out of going to your comments. It is unbelievable how many people you upset on a daily basis on Twitter. And that's the whole thing, that many of these individuals, I'm not saying that they lack integrity, but they lack guts. And this is why they resort to pandering. And they believe saying something like this, number one, it really shields them from any claims of racism. And number two, they get all the applause from all the people they think is going to help them move up the ladder in terms of the media field.
I'm going to go a layer deeper on my take on why, like, particularly as it relates to women's college basketball. So she argues in her piece that many of the all-time great players previously were black, and they were big players. They were Cheryl Miller. They were Lisa Leslie.
Yes.
They were, they didn't get the acclaim they deserved. And that these white players from Paige Buchers and Caitlin Clark to Diana Taurasi to Sue Bird. She's arguing that they are more skilled and play the game in a more relatable way and in a way that attracts fans. And she's right. But this again goes back to my point of many of these white players come from two-parent families where mom and or dad is shuttling them to all these AAU tournaments, specialized coaching, where they develop the skills. And then many of the great black players have been relying on their talent. Oh, I'm 6'3", I'm 6'5", I'm this, and those aren't skill, and it's not attractive or it's not interesting to watch a big person play women's basketball because they're just not very skilled, and it's not a beautiful style of play, and it doesn't attract the kind of attention.
Well, Jason, I don't want to go all Korean Don Imus here, but I want to bring up that name again. You know, a women's sport I actually can watch, and I'll see it when I'm working out, or I have when I was at LA Fitness and be on the screen. Women's college softball, I actually enjoy what I watch. Now, I'm not like you. I don't carve out my day. I don't look for the TV schedule of women's college softball and set up my big screens, okay? I'm not like that. But here's what I like about the game. The hitting is much improved. Not every game is a no-hitter anymore, a double no-hitter. That used to happen a lot when I was growing up. The hitting, I'm just telling you, these girls are now driving the ball. They're getting the barrel on the ball, and they're driving it. The skill level, I'm just telling you, because the bases are shorter, these infielders have very quick hands. I know a little bit about baseball. They actually transfer the ball very well. Also, the pace of play is quick. The game is not monotonous. But here's the thing. These young ladies look very feminine. I mean, I'm just watching this game going, wow, these are nice, young, wholesome ladies. They look nice. Like, these are the type that you could bring home to your mom. You take them to the prom and put a nice corsage on and hold hands and take a portrait of. It matters. I know it's an uncomfortable situation, but this is what we do on Fearless. They look aesthetically pleasing. That is a factor, Jason.
I'm friends with TJ Hushmanzada. No, TJ and his wife.
TJ, good receiver.
They have two daughters. They played softball at LSU. Yeah, at LSU. Great players. And the investment in time that TJ and his wife did in developing, and particularly TJ, developing these daughters is amazing. And TJ's daughters, just like you said, very attractive, very skilled, very wholesome, come from a great supportive family. These issues, as it relates to women's, they're just so much more complicated than most people can discuss and talk about. Again, this USA Today story I just find very offensive, very stupid. It's like these media outlets and media, they're invested in promoting racial division. And it's almost like if someone wrote it, you know what? It's important that quarterbacks in the NFL remain white because white quarterbacks built the league. I mean, who would make that argument? But we can now make the argument that like somehow Caitlin Clark is bad for women's basketball. It's stupid. I want to move on.
Jason, one last. Could you imagine what's her next article? Yeah. The Indy 500 series in NASCAR needs more Asian drivers. That's probably the next step. But anyway, go ahead. Move on. Good
segue into Russell Wilson plans to sign a one-year deal with the Pittsburgh Steelers for the 2024 season. And I love it. I love it. I think it's a great opportunity for Russell Wilson. I think it's a great opportunity I think it's going to put a little pressure on Mike Tomlin because they got a heck of a defense in Pittsburgh. And again, it's a good opportunity for Tomlin because maybe Russell Wilson reemerges, but let's say Russell Wilson flops, Mike Tomlin can blame it on Russell Wilson the same way Sean Payton just blamed it on Russell Wilson. But I think it's a good opportunity for Russell Wilson and for Mike Tomlin. I love this move.
I'm intrigued. And as someone that used to be a big Russell Wilson fan and is not anymore, Here's my advice to Danger Russ. Don't be a weirdo. Be a grinder. You're now in the Steel City. No, I'm being dead serious, Jason. I'm being dead. This is a city that's meat and potatoes, okay? There's a blue-collar ethos that exists, okay? Or you'd like to think that. And you have to be a grinder. The first thing I would do now, I'd get numbers of George Pickens and Deontay Johnson and be a team leader. Be careful what you post on social media. Any of that Mr. Impossible or whatever, don't do that. Try to not even feature your wife. Don't bring it up. Just be a quarterback. Be the hardest working guy. Be an example. Be a guy that Tomlin will say in 5-6 months, man, Russell Wilson's blown me away with his leadership. He's the first one in, last one out. Because he has got to rehabilitate, Jason, not just himself as a player, but as a locker room guy and as a leader. And Jason, you may agree or disagree. Quarterback is a position of leadership, first and foremost. And I think he's failed in that aspect the last couple years in Seattle and certainly in Denver. I am rooting for Russell Wilson because I don't want him to fail. I really don't. I think at heart he's a good guy, but he got caught up in this whole celebrity world with his wife, and he's turned off a lot of people. So this could be a great redemption story, or it could be the end of it.
Steve, great point. I'm not even going to try to follow that up because I think you said something very fascinating. And so, guys, I want you all to cut that out, just Steve's advice for Russell Wilson.
Yes,
I think that's interesting, and we'll leave that alone. Yeah, well, I think it's good advice. And
hey, Jason, I can see it now. In early January at the NFL Awards before the Super Bowl, Russell Wilson's the comeback player of the year as he gets the trophy. I want to thank all my teammates, but I want to thank Steve Kim of Fearless. There was this particular clip that he gave me advice, and this is what I got right here, the trophy. And thank you, Ciara. Now get out of here. Yeah, okay, we'll see.
No.
We'll see.
It could happen. You never know. Finally, Steve, as a fan of combat sports, although you're not the biggest fan of UFC, Donald Trump did another big interest at the UFC fight, and then he's pictured talking, engaging with Cincinnati quarterback Joe Burrow, 49ers pass rusher Nick Bosa. They're pictured after the event together, smiling. And the thing that's interesting to me is there hasn't been incredible blowback against Joe Burrow as of yet. And, you know, Nick Bosa has always, from the beginning of his NFL career, taken a little blowback for being a Trump supporter. But it almost feels like the tide has significantly changed and that there's a lot less blowback for these athletes for not pretending that Donald Trump is herpes, and if you shake his hand, you'll be just like Usher Raymond. You don't break out with cold sores. Have things changed? Can athletes now be Trump supporters?
A little bit, but hold on. I wanted to see, it would have been a bigger deal if it would have been like T. Higgins or Jamar Chase. I think there's almost an acceptance that if white athletes do it, there's like, okay, he's a white guy. I get it. But listen, the way this country is in the state that it's in, there's at least a little bit of a capitulation in saying, you know what? Maybe things were not as disastrous with Donald J. Trump as we tried to tell you, and look where we are now. Here's what I find interesting. Every time Donald Trump shows up to a UFC fight, it's a big deal. The crowd loves it inside the arena. And look, I am not a big UFC fan. I'll watch it once in a while with Mario, and we'll talk about it on the show this week. They had a big card. But Jason, inevitably, there's a group of MMA journalists. All they do is bitch, moan, whine, and cry. Oh my God, this is turning into a Trump rally, but we don't want to be political. And I'm thinking to myself, hey, buddy, you guys are more partisan than anybody. This is why Dana White hates most of the MMA media and why I give him a lot of credit, because he just tells these guys off. You could believe whatever you want. We're going to support whatever we want. But I'm just telling you, It's like death and taxes. Every time that individual steps into an arena, he gets a large ovation. Everybody there seems to love it. And there's these group of whiny liberals who, again, they are allowed to support what they want. I'm not taking that away. But I have a question. If it was Joe Biden showing up to a ball game, would they have an issue with that? Do they say that this shouldn't be political or this is turning into a Democratic rally? To me, it's not even that they don't like Trump. That's fine. It's really the hypocrisy to me that is appalling, Jason.
I'll say what's interesting. To me, Dana White has clearly said that UFC is going to be a Trump-friendly event.
Yes.
Because every time, and look, maybe Trump's team's doing this without Dana White's knowledge, but Dana White generally escorts Trump in and seems to be in on it. And then I see a lot of conservative influencers at UFC fights. This seems like it's the place to go where for conservative influencers, or if you don't hate Donald Trump, you can go to a UFC fight, and from Candace Owens to Patrick Bet-David to whomever, they can get treated like they're a big deal at a UFC fight where they would be vilified if they went to an NBA game or an NFL game.
I don't think there's any doubt
or
about
ignored.
it. Yeah, or worse, harangued and harassed, and nobody wants that. I did find it interesting. I was like, wow, Candace Owens is near an octagon. And I like Candace. I do. I'm a fan, and I watch some of her stuff. If you would have said, Steve, did you know this year Candace Owens is going to be octagon side? I'd be like, no. She does not look like a boxing fan or a combat sports fan, but there is a cultural movement. But I do find it interesting. I've been watching some old fights back when boxing was boxing. Donald Trump played a huge role in the sport. I mean, one of my favorite fights in 1991 between the great James Lights Out Tony and Mike McCallum, that took place on Trump's property. Okay? The great fight between Roberto Duran and Iran Barkley. Guess who put up a lot of money for that? Donald Trump. And Mike Tyson, a lot of his fights in Atlantic City, you know who was front and center in those promotions? Donald Trump. Just stating a fact, that's all.
Steve, I got one more thing I want to throw at you.
Yeah.
Before I let you go. It's Kirk Cousins has signed a 4-year deal with the Atlanta Falcons. Good move, great move, big deal, little deal. I like Kirk Cousins as a person. I love what he stands for. I love what he's made of his career. But I don't think Kirk Cousins is a Super Bowl winning quarterback. He's had a good stretch in Minnesota. He's had a good stretch in Washington. Has he had any playoff success?
No.
And I don't know if he's going to lead to playoff success in Atlanta, but the Falcons, and my memory is a little bit shaky,
Jason,
but didn't they just re-sign Raheem Morris as their head coach?
Yeah, well, Jason, this is what Kirk Cousins is, and this is what he's going to give you. Every year he'll give you over 4,000 yards, a lot of touchdowns, and you'll generally win some games. You'll make playoffs. But he's basically a more consistent Mark Rippon, albeit without the 1991 Special Magic MVP season. Okay? But there's no doubt about it that if Kirk Cousins is healthy last year, the Vikings are a threat. He was playing some real ball, Jason. I'm just telling you, if the Vikings would have had that guy, they challenge for that division. That's just my view of it. Also, he is a steep upgrade over what they had in Atlanta last year, Desmond Ridder. And what is a quarterback's best friend? The run game, right? They got Bijan Robinson, the French mustard, and they have Algieri, so that's a good 1-2 punch. Drake London, big-bodied receiver. So there's some parts out there. Look, what Kirk Cousins is going to give Atlanta, if he is healthy, he's a good version, is stability at quarterback. And Jason, I'm not saying he's a top 5 elite quarterback because he's not, but he's been a good, solid pro. And right now, I think the Falcons would take that, a good, solid pro.
So NFC South, they've made 2 big quarterback deals. Atlanta gets Kirk Cousins.
Okay.
Tampa Bay re-ups with Baker Mayfield.
I like that.
3 years, $100 million.
Right.
Which is who's got a better QB situation? Falcons or Buccaneers?
I think the Bucs made the right choice, and so did Baker. I'm going to lean to the Buccaneers. I thought Baker actually had a renaissance year. I thought he gave them stability. They made the playoffs. They had a playoff win. And what did Baker need right now? He needed stability because he had started to become a bit of a nomad. And as long as Tampa Bay keeps Mike Evans, okay, they made the playoffs and they won a playoff game and they played the Lions close at home. I thought the worst thing for Baker Mayfield to do is go to another team, learn another system with another set of coordinators and all that other stuff, and to start over. Right now, Baker Mayfield, I believe that's a pretty good fit between him and Tampa Bay. I like that move. I'll say Tampa Bay to your question.
Wow. And so you did find it because it's definitely the right move for Baker, but you're saying it's the right move for Tampa as well.
Yes.
I'm not so sure.
Why not?
I do like the price. I do like the price.
Right.
It's
Well,
not a
that's
$40 million a year deal. I like the price for Baker Mayfield, but I guess I think Kirk Cousins has a bit more upside than Baker Mayfield in Atlanta.
All right. That's your opinion. But remember, Kirk Cousins has a lot more miles on the odometer, and he's coming off an injury. And here's the other point I want to make. You talk to people that know more football than I do, guys like Coach JB and other people, they will tell you this quarterback draft, they're not that high on it. No matter what the mainstream media says, this is not 1983. It simply isn't. And they actually think there's going to be more guys that bust than more guys that hit. So if you can get a guy in Baker Mayfield, and I know his limitations, but I want to defend old Bake a little bit. He made the playoffs with the Browns, and I think they had a victory there over Pittsburgh, and they played the Chiefs tough that year, right? Led the Buccaneers to a playoff win. So again, he may have been overdrafted at number 1, but you will not tell me that Baker Mayfield is not a legitimate starting NFL quarterback.
We will end on that note. We'll see you later this week. That's Steve Kim. That's our show. Play some tomorrow. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom. Looking for a breakout, feeling like a standoff, nothing in life like freedom. Came in like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all these moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on the corner, never been alone. I'm breaking my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free. We want freedom. I wanna